Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to the Danny Batten Fight Show, episode number 18. It is a Sunday evening, as usual for us, but it's Wednesday for you guys. We are here to talk MMA and boxing. As we have done for the past 4 or 5 weeks, we've been going to be talking a lot of retro stuff, but next week there is a current, new, live mixed martial arts pay-per-view finally. Whether you agree with it or you don't, it's happening. At least it is at the moment. Maybe by Wednesday when this show comes out, it won't be happening. So we're gonna open the show by picking our predictions, having a little chat about that card. Then we're gonna move on and we're gonna talk Nigel Benn versus Chris Eubank 2. Then we're going to talk about the colossal UFC number 6 tournament, which was my favourite so far, I've got to say. Some big dudes in there smashing each other up. And then we're going to finish off with our first in our little mini series within a series, which was requested by, I think, Johnny Wish, which is looking at the rise of, the meteoric rise, I would say, of Welsh fighter Jack Shaw, who's still a very young man, but he sort of stormed through the Cage Warrior ranks into the UFC. So we're going to look at some of his earlier fights through Cage Warriors each week until we get to his UFC debut. Obviously, that will all be dependent on what fights we can find, but we found one where he's on the prelims of Cage Warriors, which will be is looking forward to talking. And yes. Just a little quick bit of housekeeping before we get into everything. Obviously, all our shows, as usual, are available on youtube.com/ACEpodcastNation for the videos. If you could subscribe, that would help us out a lot. That's the best way to support the channel and the show. This helps us keep growing and finding new listeners, new viewers. Drop us a thumbs up, give it a share, tell people you're listening, tell people to check us out. I am starting to upload the shows. I uploaded last week's show onto Facebook as well, because we do seem to have considerably more followers and viewers on Facebook. So whilst YouTube is the place to get all shows first in the video format, I am going to start uploading shows to Facebook a couple of days later as well. You can find the audio versions of all the usual podcasting platforms and apps and radio apps. The best way to find the links for all those is in the description for the shows, or if you go to pod.co/ace-cast-nation and you press subscribe, all the links come up with all the various things, whether it's Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and alike. As always, today's show brought to you by Away Day Apparel. Away Day Apparel is fast becoming the brand on the casual scene. Some lovely t-shirts, lovely hats, and other clothing. They got big plans for 2020 with a lot of really nice stuff coming out very soon. I think they're dropping a new shirt design this week. And if you would like 10% off your order, especially for viewers, listeners of Ace Podcast Nation and the Danny Batten Fight Show, if you use the code, all in lowercase, AA Podcast Nation, you can get 10% off. Just put in the code AA Podcast Nation, all in lowercase, at the checkout, and you'll get 10% off all orders. And we thank them for sponsoring the show, as always. And we're very, very grateful for their support from the start to now and ongoing. Just a little thing. When this drops, this past Monday, we had former Wales international, West Ham defender, Cardiff City defender, Mr. Danny Batten joined myself and Andy Campbell for the live Monday football show, which was a really cool, big honour. Obviously, Danny was a massive footballer, Premier League footballer, one of my favourite footballers when I was a bit younger for Cardiff City. So it was an honour to speak to him alongside Andy, of course. And we also dropped the massive news that next Monday, Cardiff City Chief Executive Mehmet Dalman will be joining us live on the show, and he'll be taking your questions. You can ask him about anything you like, whether it's the Emiliano Sala tragedy. He obviously did an interview for Harry Harris's book for that, and you can also ask him about the club's stance. You can ask him anything you like. He said We do not need to filter the questions, which is, it's a big thing for us. That is, he doesn't do very many interviews. He's the chief executive of a massive football club, and it's a big guest for us, particularly for a live show. So we are very, very pleased to welcome Mr. Dalman to the show. Joining me to talk MMA tonight and boxing is none other than former Cage Warriors champion, British MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. How are you, sir?
Yeah, Si. Yeah, doing very good, thank you.
I'm all right. So that little bit of that snippet of news which I just dropped on the end there about Mr. Dalman, chief executive of Cardiff City. I haven't told anyone that yet because we're now, and Andy knows, and my wife knows, because we're dropping the news tomorrow on the live show. But because this goes out on a Wednesday, I've talked about it, which is a bit weird for me because I've been like, I'm rubbish at keeping secrets. Like, I'm really bad. Like, I try to be clever and drop hints, and then I end up just spoiling the surprise. So I do it with my wife all the time. It's my wedding anniversary next Friday as well. 12 years. Oof.
Wow.
But yeah, that's gonna be a weird one. No, in lockdown, as it were. How are you, mate? Anyway.
Yeah, doing good. I had an active week, considering, the isolation and what have you. But yeah, it's been good.
The isolation station.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's gonna be weird. Wedding anniversary next week. UFC
Yeah,
Saturday. Almost like being back to normal, almost. I had a
nearly.
lockdown trim as well. Could you see that? You see my
Yeah, looking
the
good,
little
looking
trim?
good.
So when I had it done, I had a shower, and like when you've had your haircut, no, and I kind of tied my hair back, and I sat outside having a cup of coffee and a cigarette, and I was looking on my phone just like in the camera, and I noticed. I thought it looks like I'm completely bald where my hair was wet. It was like all back. So I thought, oh, I'll take a picture, and I'm gonna put it on Facebook and just say lockdown cut question mark, and see how many people believed that
See
I
what
had
they
shaved
say.
my head, and everyone did. But I'm donating my hair, see, so I'm not gonna just shave it off on a whim, even though it was
Okay.
tempting. Because did I tell you this? I can't remember if I told you the story. I've told
I
some
don't
people
think
that.
I know this.
So basically, my youngest son, who's 11, he had seen some stuff about charities which make wigs for children with cancer or people with cancer. And what they do is people, when you get your hair to a certain length, you get a cut, and then you send it off to them in a special bag, and they make it into wigs for kids who've lost
Mm,
their hair through radiation treatment. And he sort of started to grow it out, got it to, it wasn't particularly, it was quite long, but not, longer than what he would normally have, but not like as long as mine is. And it wasn't long enough to donate at that point. And as kids do, they kind of calling him a girl and not being very
ah,
kind. So he came home from school and I'm just like, I want my hair cut. I want it cut now.
ah,
So, and he was obviously very upset, very disappointed then as well because once it's cut, isn't it? And he was
mm,
disappointed that he hadn't kind of stuck it out. Um, so I said, right, Daddy'll grow his hair. You can tell me when to cut it, and we'll do it that way. So I said to him about a month ago, right, are we gonna donate it then? Because it's like when it's down, it's like I think kind of down to between my shoulder blades. It's quite long,
yeah.
and he was like, no, I'm gonna grow it. You can grow it to your waist. Grow it to your waist. So we're still going, which is I don't mind because I'm starting to go bald. Like I got quite a not going bald as such, but like I got quite my receding hairline's getting further and further back. So I
Mm.
view it as my last big grow before I probably should just shave my head all the time. So anyway,
Nothing wrong
that's a
with a
long
shaved
story.
head, Si. Nothing wrong with a shaved
No,
head.
no, no, I know, no, absolutely. I used to. I think one of the reasons actually that my hair is so far back, like receding, is because when I was a teenager, I bleached my hair and dyed it all sorts of colours, and then I got to a point when I was about 15 where I just used to shave it all the time, have a zero
Mm,
point 0.5 all over all the time, and I think where I did that, I kind of damaged my hair, and my hair
mm.
just is like receding, but who knows? But yes, there's a little story to kick off the show about why I've got long hair. and how I didn't. It's not going to be for long, I don't think. Okay, UFC 249 next week, my friend. What a card!
Yeah,
What a
it's a
card!
good card. Yeah, very, very good card. And even the prelims are good enough to be as a main card.
Yeah. Well, so here's a question for you. What do you think? Do you remember a card ever be on any promotion ever being this stacked?
I mean, well, we have been treated to a few stack cards, but this is right the way across. I mean, every single one's just intriguing. It really is. But I just think it's going to happen more often now because the pool of talented fighters are so huge. The matchup potential is quite large. So I just think you're going to get from time to time and a little bit more often. Um, these amazing cards. It's great. I mean, we've all been starved from these fight events for a while now with this lockdown, and what one to be treated to. It's like deciding to go on a sugar-free diet for a few months before your holiday, and you get your first day of holiday, and you get to have all your sweets and cake in one day. It's a bit like that.
Yeah, and do you know? I was thinking about it. Like, I looked at that prelim just now, and I've seen like the UFC on Fox cards and one or two pay-per-views which have got
Mm,
worse cards than the main prelim.
yeah,
Because there has been times where they've had fighters pull out or the stuff hasn't come off, and they've had some pretty
mm,
poor poor cards. And I
yeah,
look at that prelim and I said that's a real card on its own. You've
yeah,
Donald
yeah,
Cerrone uh, main event versus Conor McGregor. What, a couple of months ago? I
yeah, yeah.
think was it the last pay per view? In fact, was
Mm,
it UFC 248
believe
that
so.
they fought? I think it was, wasn't it? I think that was the last main pay per view we covered. Um, or even if it wasn't that one, it was the one before. And now he's main event in a prelim versus Anthony Pettis, which
Yeah,
is it's crazy to me.
that is
Um,
crazy.
and I do think it frustrates me a little bit that Greg Hardy is on the main card, whereas Donald Cerrone and Anthony Pettis is main event in the prelims. I
Yeah,
get
that's the only. Yeah, it's a little bit strange.
not a fan of Greg Hardy, but there we go. Nothing to do
Mm,
with his fight. Well, I don't think he's a great fighter, but obviously he's fairly well known for I think it's
American
football,
football, isn't it?
American football.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah. So obviously, I understand why they're pushing him, and he's a big name outside. They love these kind of crossover
yeah,
fighters. You had
mm,
CM Punk a couple of years ago who came
yeah,
over
yeah,
from the WWE. They've got this when you've got people who've got a big name in other sports, particularly like CM Punk was massive in America.
mm,
Same with Greg Hardy. So you're gonna push him, but like he's shown in his in his I think he's 5-2. That he's not going to be, or he's at the moment he's not on a main event or upper card talent. He's inexperienced.
mm.
So shouldn't he be main event in the prelims? And
Yeah,
Donald Cerrone and Pettis should be on the main card, but I don't know. It's baffling to me. And then when you add in his issues with domestic violence, I
mm,
think that all kind of
mm,
culminates with me not being a massive fan.
yeah.
But they do like to have heavyweight fights, don't they, where they can. Okay, let's go through the card. We'll start with the first prelim of the main ESPN card, which is Uriah Hall versus Ronaldo Sosa in the middleweight bout.
Yeah.
What who you got?
Hey, now this one's a little bit difficult to choose, but I'm going to go Ronaldo.
Yes, I was leaning towards Ronaldo. The last time I remember seeing Uriah Hall fight, I wasn't too impressed.
Yeah.
Um,
The thing is,
he's getting
he,
on a little bit in old age.
yeah, well, they're both
Sousa's not. He's
not
not young, is
there.
he? Sousa's 40.
Yeah, they're both not, past probably their physical peaks. But yeah, Uriah Hall had so much potential, but just doesn't seem to have fulfilled it.
Yeah, and I think Ronaldo Souza's grappling is obviously extremely high level.
Yeah,
He doesn't, he's not dependent too much on sort of speed.
yeah,
So it makes me think that maybe his age won't affect him too much. Maybe,
yeah.
but
But
Uriah
he's
Hall's no mug on
yeah.
the ground.
Ronaldo seems to settle for his striking, which I think he's become a pretty decent striker. I think he's not done
Yeah,
bad. He's
yeah, and
impressed me.
Uriah Hall's a very good kickboxer, and his jiu-jitsu is very good as well.
Mm,
I don't think it's going to be, an easy fight either way. Um,
mm.
this is a prelim fight, I think, at this stage. They're both one Uriah Hall's 35. I didn't realise that. I thought he was a bit older than that.
Yeah,
And Sosa's 4. I'm going to go with Uriah Hall. I've just changed my mind, just for the
because of
age,
his
and it
yeah.
means we can
That's what made it a
we can
bit.
disagree as
Do I
well.
still go for Ronaldo? But he always comes, in good shape. So
Yeah. So I'm going to be in blue. You're going to be red. You gone for Souza. I've gone for Uriah Hall. Who have you got for the
female bout is it
Carla
next?
Carla
Yeah,
Esparza versus Michelle
and
Watson?
another
Difficult
really
one to call.
difficult one. They both had their losses, haven't they? I'm going to
Yeah.
go Carla.
I'm going to go Michelle Waterson for that one.
Yeah,
I quite like Michelle Waterson. But yeah, you're
yeah,
right. They've both lost quite high profile
yeah,
bouts. So it's a very tough one to call. But I'm going to
yeah.
go with Michelle Waterson to find that winning thread again. And okay, next up we've got Alexei Aloniak versus Fabricio Verdum.
I think Verdum's going to win this
Really
all
looking
day
forward to
long.
this one.
Yeah, I think Verdum will do him all day long.
Ooh, ooh, interesting. Because I quite fancy Alonek. Quite like him. But do I think he'll beat Verdum?
I think he's too old,
Yeah,
too slow.
big boys. Big boys. You'd expect uh, Fabricio Verdum. Aloniak is 42. Um, see, he's a good sambo fighter, and I've been
Mm.
enjoying watching the sambo fighters in the retro
Yeah,
UFC.
yeah.
Obviously, we've been watching Taktarov's debut, and do I go against you? No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go for Doom as well.
You coward.
He's my yeah. I do fancy him. I just I don't think it's gonna. I don't think Verdum's gonna just come in and just waste him and walk it. I do think it's going to be quite, and it's these heavyweights as well. Like,
Yeah,
it just takes one punch, one
yeah.
connected punch, and can be all
Mm.
over. And then the age doesn't come
Absolutely.
into it. Then does it?
Mm.
Both guys have got a relatively good chin. Do I change my mind? I'm going to go with. No, I'm going to go with Alexi. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with my initial thought, which was I fancied Alexei Aloniak. So we'll go against each other again. And then main event, as mentioned just now, is of the prelim is Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis. Cerrone coming off his loss to Conor
Yeah.
McGregor.
I
We've
think
got
Cerrone's going to
Monty
shine through
Whoop.
again. I think he's going to shine through. Second win for his
Ooh,
career.
second, third, fourth, fifth win,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think,
you
isn't
could
it?
say that.
But he has shown, in fairness, he has shown that he can come back from a loss.
Yeah.
He's done it many
I think he's
times.
past his peak, but I don't know. I just think he's got. I think he's quite a bit bigger than Pettis. I just think, yeah, I just think he's got the tools of diversity to beat Pettis. Yeah, if Cerrone wants to take it to the ground, I think he can. I think he might choose that route.
I'm going to go with Pettis.
Hmm.
He's got a little bit of youth on his side.
He
He's
has.
good in the grappling, and so I think he won't be a loss if it takes it to the ground, and
Hmm.
he's got good taekwondo and kickboxing
Mm.
record. He's ranked 15. Um, obviously he's the younger brother of Sergio Pettis. Do I go with that? Do I go with that? Do I go with that? Yeah, I'm gonna stick again with my initial thought. Um, he lost to a rear naked choke to Ferreira recently.
Mm.
Well, 20 in January 2020. Um, Before that, he was supposed to face. Oh, he faced Nate Diaz, but he went to a unanimous decision,
Mm.
which was a really good fight. But
Yeah,
prior to that, he won Performance of the Night, beating Stephen Wonderboy Thompson via knockout in the second round.
yeah.
Now he was the
That
first person to ever knock out Stephen
yeah,
Thompson.
that shocked me, to be honest.
So I'm going to go with he knocked out Stephen Thompson. Then he took Nate Diaz 3 rounds
Yeah,
to a decision, and
yeah.
Ferreira's been on a tear.
Didn't Nate Diaz? He pinged him up, didn't he? If I
Yeah, he
remember.
did. Yeah, but he lasted. He lasted. He lasted, and obviously Ferreira's been on a tear anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to go with, even though Cerrone's got the size advantage, I'm going to go with Anthony Pettis to do what he had been previously doing before that. Why not?
Mm.
Then we got Greg Hardy versus Jorgan de Castro.
Yeah.
That's quite a tricky one to pick.
It is actually
Um,
a little tricky.
I don't know barely anything about Jorgan de Castro.
Same.
I don't.
I don't know
Yeah,
whether he's
yeah.
been
He hasn't even
drafted
got a
in.
wiki. He hasn't even got a Wikipedia page for me to have a look.
No.
So
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go Greg Hardy just because I think this other guy, this Castro fella's been brought in to
for
help
Greg
puffing up
Hardy.
to be puffing up Greg Hardy's record.
Yeah, they want, at the end of the day, they want Greg Hardy to win.
Yeah.
So I don't see them putting him in with like
Yeah.
a
And
fresh young contender who
yeah,
they think is going to immediately
I
be ready.
I
So
suspect that the reason why they got these in is because it depends what happens with the Francis fight as well, and I
yeah,
think they could
just
end
in
up
case.
matching up at some point.
Yeah, so we both go for Gregory Hardy. Next up, featherweight bout between Jeremy Stevens and Calvin Kattar.
Oh, I know another. This fight's going to be awesome, but I'm going to go for Kelvin. Just think his striking's going to be better.
Take him home. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I was leaning towards. I don't like going for the same fighter, but sometimes you've got to just,
got to.
it is what
Yeah,
it is, isn't it? I do like Calvin Kattar.
yeah,
So a quick look. I think his striking, his boxing particularly, is very, very good.
yeah,
Um, and then obviously you've got, sorry, Jeremy Stevens is so experienced in
yeah,
in these big bouts. He's
yeah,
won some big ones, lost some big ones.
yeah.
Um, is he, you know, is he up to the level still?
I just think he's not as hungry as Calvin Qatar will be.
Yeah, I can't even. I got to say, I cannot remember the last time um, I was genuinely impressed
Mm,
by Jeremy Stevens, and I don't
yeah,
mean that in any sort of disrespectful way. I just like he lost. He did take Zabit Mahmoud Shapirov to a decision.
mm,
Obviously, Shapirov is a um, is the kind of the future, if you like.
mm,
Um, he had a no contest with Yair Rodriguez after just 15 seconds because
mm,
Rodriguez accidentally swatted him in the eye and he was unable to continue. They did a rematch of that, which he lost the decision, but they did have fight of the night. If I remember correctly, that was an absolute banger of a match.
mm.
Um, I'm going to go with Jeremy Stevens just for the sake of me versus you. For the show, mate. For the show. Even though I probably fancy guitar slightly more. It's a hard one to pick, though. Hard one to pick. Again, could you argue that Cerrone and Pettis could be on the main card ahead of that. I think there's a shout for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'd think
But then
so.
maybe they're giving Cerrone and Pettis more money to main event the prelims is
Mm,
the other option.
mm.
Because they do like they call it the main event of the prelims, don't they? They don't
Yeah,
just kind of build into the card, and they build it as the big fight of the pre-show. Next up, we've got these two monsters in
yes,
Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rosenstruck in the
yeah,
heavyweight division.
yeah.
Boy, oh
Francis
boy.
Ngannou, I've noticed him steadily improving. So I just think we're going to see more of him improve again, and I think that gives it the edge for me. So I'm going to go Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, I think before he lost Ngannou, I'd have said Ngannou in every time.
Yeah,
Obviously, he got beaten a couple of times. Was it twice he got beaten? Because he
yeah,
got beaten back to back, didn't he?
mm,
But after he got knocked out by, oh, who was it? Who knocked him out? Oh, it was his first big fight, and he got KO'd. Who was that? But yeah, prior to getting knocked out, he had looked like an absolute unstoppable monster.
yeah, yeah,
Then he got knocked out. Then the following fight, which was supposed to be his kind of his revenge and his retribution. Um, here you are. So that's right. So he lost to Stipe
that's a
by
decision, wasn't it,
decision.
Stipe?
Did he get knocked? I thought he got knocked out, but maybe he didn't. Yes. So right. So he lost via decision to Stipe for the championship, and he probably shouldn't have been in that match. I think he stepped in for someone in
Right.
2018 when he was on his tear. Then he lost another decision against Derek Lewis, which was heavily criticised because they just basically stood there, not really doing much, both of them. Um, he lost that by decision. Then he faced Curtis Blades in a rematch from their previous bout, which he had won by TKO. He won that one via TKO early in the first round. Then he faced Cain Velasquez, beat him in the first round comfortably. Then he faced Junior Dos Santos, won that with performance of the night, technical knockout. And then he's got his previous fight. So I think that he has got his. I think he kind of. It was a mental thing after he
Mm.
lost. Um, so yeah, I'm thinking Ngannou's back, and I can't see Jairzinho Rosenstruck beating him. But again, like I said earlier, heavyweights, you never know.
You
You
never
just
know.
you
No,
just don't know.
absolutely.
But I know we're both going for Francis. Um, and then you've got Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. We talked about this
Yeah,
briefly last week,
yeah,
where we is Dominic Cruz going to have had enough training to be back up to his
yeah.
the
I,
standards that he set over
I,
the
I
years.
don't think he's been out of training other than the fact that he's had these injuries. But I think he's still in there in the mix. But he hasn't had cage time for a number of years. He's just not been regular. And I think he's a real timing, footwork orientated fighter. And I think Henry Cejudo is a really difficult, tricky customer. I just think Cejudo will make his wrestling count. I think he will get hold of Dominic and be able to get him to the ground, um, and get combinations as he enters in. I think I would have perhaps gone towards Dominic, perhaps a few years ago, if he was the way he was then. But I don't know. I just, yeah, Henry's really on a roll with his performances at the minute. I
Yes.
think he's still at the peak of that. So I'm going to go Henry Cejudo.
So I would have gone with Dominic Cruz if he'd had a fight in the build up to this.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like we said with Conor versus Khabib, if Conor had had like a warm up fight, would it have been a different story? Maybe not,
yeah,
but
mm,
um, I do like Dominic Cruz, and
yeah.
God, I'm gonna
You,
go. I am gonna stick with Dominic Cruz because he is one of my One of my guys I like to watch. And
Yeah,
I
I
really like his commentary as well.
yeah.
So I'm going to
I
go with
think
him for the sake of the
Do-
show
with
as well.
I think Dominic's mindset for this is it either throws him straight back in there, or I think he'll retire if he loses. Because he has kind of like built his career around commentating now, and I suspect
Yeah.
it's a make or break for him on whether he decides to stay around fighting or not.
Yeah, is this for the championship?
Well, it's got a C in brackets on the so
Yeah, for the
or does that only
bantamweight.
mean
No, it's for the bantamweight title.
right?
And then the main event for the interim UFC lightweight championship, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. We talked about the
Man,
risk of this match last week for
yeah,
Ferguson, as
yeah,
if he loses this, he might never get his shot at Khabib for
yeah,
the full title.
yeah. So hard, very, very hard. As long as Tony Ferguson doesn't get heavily cut, and I think if Gaethje was going to win, he's going to win because he's going to end up cutting Ferguson. But I just think Justin Gaethje will just go. We know what he's going to go like. He's going to go like a bull in a china shop. He's going to go all out, and I just think Tony Ferguson, other than the fact that he's got the potential to get cut, I just think he's just too crafty. He'll survive the onslaught and will give some back. But I just think as it creeps into the latter rounds, I think he'll keep giving some back and just kind of outrun Justin Gaethje out. And I just think he'll just start pouring it onto him. I've got to go Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, I think if Tony Ferguson didn't have the personality that he's got and train the way he trains, I would lean
Yeah,
towards Gaethje. I really like
yeah,
Justin Gaethje. I think he's a fantastic fighter. And I was one of the ones who was saying, whilst I would love to see Conor McGregor fight Justin Gaethje, I didn't think that it was a good fight for Conor to take because Justin Gaethje is so dangerous. Exactly
absolutely.
the same that I think for Ferguson. I don't think it's the best fight for him to be taken at this point,
Yeah,
simply because the Khabib fight has been taken away from him so many times.
sure.
However, you know, fighters are a different breed, as you know, mate. Being a
Yes.
former fighter yourself, and they want to fight. And Tony Ferguson is a particular breed of fighter who is a little bit crazy and a little bit,
Yeah,
he'll bang with anyone. And I
yeah,
just can't bet. I can't go against Tony Ferguson because
yeah.
he can win on the ground. He can win from his back. He can win from on top. He can win on his feet. I just feel like he's got that X factor. And I feel like out of every single fighter in the world, or in the UFC at least, he'll be the least affected by the lockdown and the coronavirus and that
Well,
sort of
yeah,
thing because his training doesn't really involve a great deal of sparring anyway.
yeah. I
So he
sometimes wonder
says.
whether, yeah, I sometimes wonder whether that's really the whole truth. I imagine
Yeah, of
he is
course.
getting his sparring rounds in, but yeah, he's got his wooden dummy. If he ain't going to spar with people, he'll be working on that kung fu dummy of his, um, and kicking metal poles and crazy stuff that he
Yeah,
does.
and just
Uh,
carrying barrels
yeah,
and
I think they're both crazy dudes. I mean, both of them would be a scary, you know, thought to go up against. You're not going to have it easy no matter what with the pair of them. I think Gaethje's just a tough guy, and I think Tony Ferguson's just a nutcase in the nicest possible way. And yeah, I just think the nutcase is going to just edge it for me.
they're both. Thing is, they will both just stand and bang with anyone.
Yeah,
Gaethje particularly is just he likes to just stand and bang.
yeah,
And Ferguson, you think like if he does stand and bang and get caught, he'll take it to the ground. And that's not to say that that won't necessarily suit Like Gaethje's not, afraid of being on the ground.
yeah,
But Tony Ferguson, like you mentioned, the
yeah,
word crafty is,
yeah.
it's the right word. He is clever, clever dude.
Yeah,
He's
he's
got
creative.
very
He'll
strong fight IQ
there's
to
there's
go
no
with the
two ways of
craziness.
yeah. Gaethje's got the power. He'll be the one pressing forward mostly, especially in the early rounds. I just think that as he does press Ferguson back, Ferguson will come with his own stuff and footwork back and circle. As much as we're making out Ferguson to be, a crazy dude, which, there's a lot of argument in favour that that's the case. I think he's actually still quite a smart fighter too. And I don't think he'll stand toe to toe by not footworking off. He don't want to see who's the tougher man. He wants to prove he's the better man. So I just think he'll fight going backwards. I think he'll be creative, and he'll keep firing things, and he'll create a win somehow. That's just the way I feel it's going to be. He's going to come up with something. He'll come up with some crazy elbow, crazy knee strike, or some kind of crazy takedown into a submission. But just think, he's just going to create one too many opportunities that eventually catch Gaethje out. Gaethje, we know what he's going to do. He's going to go in with everything he's got hard as he can. And I think for that part, it's a little bit too one-dimensional. And this will let Ferguson's game come alive.
It's weird. Like, Justin Gaethje is an NCAA All-American. He is, a high-level college wrestler. High level.
Yeah.
But he rarely goes to that. He's much more of a banger. He's won 18 of his 21 wins have come by knockout or technical knockout. And he's won 4 fight of the nights, 3 performance of the nights, in his 6 UFC fights, which is crazy stats.
Yeah, that is. But I think he'll never. I think I've seen some interviews and stuff about the way he fights, and one of the crazy things that he said that one of his ambitions is to get a broken leg, and in a fight. I mean, that's just craziness. I think he's in it for the pure passion and enjoyment of the scrap that's in front of him. Of course, winning is all important to all fighters to a point, but I don't think that's the most important thing to him. I think he just wants to tear up with the best there is and see what's what.
Indeed, yeah. So Gaethje's last few fights, so he fought. He lost to Dustin Poirier via TKO.
Yeah,
but they won
Shocker.
Fight of the night.
But Poirier's good striker.
Yes, he is. Yeah. And then he fought Al Iaquinta, a UFC Fight Night 135. But Iaquinta withdrew, so he was replaced by James Vick. Gaethje won via knockout in the first round. Again, performance of the night. Then he faced Edson Barboza on UFC on ESPN 2, won via knockout in the first round, fight of the night. Then he faced Donald Cerrone. He won via TKO in the first round again, performance of the night. And now he's taken in short notice to fight Tony Ferguson. And let's face it, if he beats Ferguson, he's in line to face Khabib. And you wouldn't put it past him, because he will fight Khabib like no other fighter. Like we said with Ferguson, Ferguson's so crafty that I don't think he would attack Khabib and go forward.
Counter-attack.
But and I think Conor would be the same. He'd try and play what he's renowned for with the counter punches, which he didn't do in the first fight. Whereas I think Gaethje would really go at Khabib and let's see what he's got when he gets to Anyway, out of the three of them, I'd like to see Gaethje versus Khabib more
and
than...
if you have a look at Gaethje's early fights before he even come into UFC, I know you could kind of argue, or is that even relevant to the fighter he is today? But I'm talking to his wrestling aspects. If he goes up against Khabib, Khabib really likes to shoot in on the hip and legs and drive up against the fence. If you have a look at Gaethje's early fights, he's got a hell of a sprawl on him. He really thumps down those hips. He's got a really high sense of when someone's coming in for that takedown, and he shuts the door really heavy and hard. It's not to say that Khabib won't get him to the ground, but at what consequence? How much physical deficit will it, take to get him down? And also with that anxiety and stress of someone coming at you as hard as someone like Gaethje. I don't know. It'd be a great match. Ferguson or Gaethje against Khabib, just wonderful matchups.
Yeah, I'm almost over the Khabib Ferguson thing, because it just keeps getting cancelled.
Yeah,
it's been cancelled so much that it's
Yeah.
like, oh, let's just not bother now because it's
Yeah.
just never going to happen. Okay, so let's move on to the old, what would you call it? Classic boxing. So
Right.
this week we had the superb. Would you say superb? Nigel Benn versus Chris Eubank 2. Sorry, do apologise.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had the first fight last week. Because we got the current stuff, we're not going to do as much detail as we did with some of the other ones, but we will cover it. We'll go into sort of do a little quick recap of each round. There was a couple of years between the first fight and the second fight. Nigel
Yeah.
Benn, I think Eubank made him earn this rematch.
Yeah.
And Nigel Benn was, I can't remember what they said when I was watching the pre-fight. I think they said Eubank was the heavy favourite in the second fight.
Right.
As opposed to in the first fight, Nigel Benn had been the
Right.
heavy favourite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might have got that the wrong way around, but yeah, Nigel Benn came into this on fire.
Yeah.
And the one thing I said to you off air actually was one thing which I noticed straight away, like when we got a few rounds in, was Nigel Benn was fighting with his skill, not his emotion in this fight. Whereas in the first fight, I felt, and I said last week, I felt he was very emotional, and he let his dislike or hatred of Chris Eubank get to him, and it affected him in part of the fight. He started well, and then he became a bit not as cohesive, I think would be the word.
Getting wild. He's getting too desperate to knock Eubank out.
Yeah, he was more concerned with knocking him out than winning the fight. And sometimes you can't knock people out. You've got to, you've got to play it, haven't you? You've got to win the fight on points. Sometimes it's just not to be. Okay, talk us through that first round.
Yeah, first round. Come out quite fast. You give me the sense that Ben knew he was in really good shape. And we've seen the fight, so you can definitely vouch that he was. I think he knew he was really fit, feeling really good, but he wasn't being crazy, and I like that. It was a good work rate, not too crazy, and I liked what I saw. But to start off with, I was kind of liking what Eubank was doing in the first round. I felt that they both give a good account of themselves, but it wasn't necessarily going to be something that I saw of Eubank what was carrying through to other rounds. I saw some nice flurries from Eubank. The thing that I keep noticing about their matchups was that Eubanks would never waste punches in the clinch. It would always be Nigel Benn that would be digging at the body and almost cuffing him on the ear. This was happening repeatedly. Now, whether that's something that Ben had planned for, I don't know, but it definitely appeared that Eubanks wanted to conserve energy and fight more outwardly and maybe try and get his jab going. Didn't really get it going in the first round too well. Although he had his moments in there, it would have been nice to see Eubank use that jab. But I felt like Ben smothered it a little bit. That's initially how I saw the round. Really difficult one to score. But
it was very difficult to score, wasn't it?
Yeah, that first one. Yeah, it could have perhaps swung either way. I just felt like when Ben was going in, his scoring was being done in the clinch, and the scoring on the outside was done by Eubanks. So I don't know. I gave it to Eubanks for the first round, but I'm not too sure. It's very, very hard to score. How did you have that first round?
I think I've lost my piece of paper now, but I think off memory I gave it to Nigel Benn.
Right.
Just because I felt like he was a bit more on the front foot, which I know doesn't necessarily, mean that he won the round. I thought Eubank used again his footwork very well, which
Yeah,
obviously we discussed
yeah,
last week. Um, I just felt Nigel Benn was aggressive again at the start, but I felt
yeah.
that this time he was more cohesive, as I mentioned. He was more
Sure.
structured in what he was doing. It didn't. It
Yeah,
wasn't. Didn't. It didn't feel to me like wild swings. Whereas some parts of last or the first fight, I felt like he was always swinging wildly, not like like wild round
mm,
haymakers, like you'd perhaps imagine when I say wildly, but I just mean like he was a bit less controlled.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
this time around, I felt like he was much, much more in
Yeah,
control of his head.
there was definitely some thought behind everything that he was doing in there. There was only one confusing spell in one of the other rounds, which we'll wait till we get there. That had me
Yeah,
a little bit scratching my head on why he chose to do it. But other than that, everything else seemed well thought out in his approach. The only reason I really scored it for Eubank was I saw what he did do land, and the only real stuff I saw actually land from Benn was really in that clinch. And and to me, that's not proper boxing. Although it might score in some format in some way, I just felt like the little combinations that Eubanks did throw that did land were enough to score a little bit better than those repeated little rabbit shots to the body and head that I was seeing from Benn. And that was the only reason why I edged it that way. But certainly visually, it looked like Benn was working harder, and I could totally see why anyone would give it the other way around. But that was just my argument of why I scored it that way.
yeah. Eubank's distance punching is so accurate, isn't it? He's
Yeah,
not much wasted energy there,
yeah,
not many
yeah.
wasted shots.
No, very proficient, and he wants almost like that real point style match. When I say point style match, it's almost like that point and stop. He wants to, tag you with a shot and see whether you can tag in with a shot. He's not a massive combination type guy. He likes to work beyond that jab and maybe get short combinations. Jab uppercuts, jab left hook, right cross. Short. He just likes to score steadily and just mindly outpoint you. I think Benn was not allowing him to have his way in all of these rounds. Now, whether you can argue that Eubanks was had his timing off, or whether it's just because Nigel Benn was coming in with good strategy, I like to think that Nigel Benn coming in with a good strategy. It really stopped Eubanks having his distance game. He never really got his jab going at all. I think the big defining difference between their last fight and this fight was that Eubanks was landing a lot of jabs in that first fight. This one, he was unable to get it. He was forced to have to go in with combinations. And those combinations were missing, and then put the tiredness on Eubanks more, whereas Eubanks normally makes his opponents miss a lot. They get tired, and he comes on strong in the second half of fights.
Yeah, I think Eubank likes to be elusive, doesn't he? And his footwork's
Yeah,
quick, and the opening couple of minutes he tries to sit behind that jab, but Nigel Benn is straight, brings it in close, closes the distance, and
yeah,
tries to get those body shots off. But
yeah,
Eubank is comfortable. He's even at this point. He'd fought so many
mm,
people who would go in with that game plan.
yeah,
He's experienced enough with it. Um,
yeah.
what about round two, mate?
Yeah, round two. This is where I feel like Nigel Benn's strategy began to show itself a little bit and started to stamp on what he wanted. He was going to work from out of range going in. So he was really working to his body, working with those headshots, clinching up and then working in the clinch and just never allowing Eubanks to settle outside range. He was going to initiate going forward, crowd any returns. And why he was trying to find his way in was trying to make himself very, very elusive. Do you remember in the first one I said about how low Benn was going? He wasn't going down
Yeah,
quite so low. This time he was going low in a way where he's looking to come in and counter off any of the long range stuff that Eubanks was going to do. It made Eubanks miss a lot. I felt like that was a big issue that Eubanks couldn't find the answer to. I think the head movement was a lot better in terms of Nigel Benn being able to counter with it and get in, smother any of the long range work of Eubanks. I was quite impressed with what I saw in round two from Benn. So that was definitely a Benn round for me.
Yeah, I did Benn in this one. I think one of the things we discussed last week was the Benn's clinch work, like his punching in the clinch.
Yeah.
Sometimes he wasn't working as much as you could perhaps he could have. Um,
Mm.
and I think there was a point in the fight where we said you could see a noticeable up in his work rate in the clinch.
Mm.
And like in the second round, straight away, as soon as they clinched up, he had some good shots. And there was
Yeah.
one point they clinched up to, I think it was about the middle of the round, and
Mm.
Eubank clinches up with him. And as they're coming out of the clinch, he nails Eubank with a big right hook. It doesn't
That's right.
rock him or anything, but he just
No,
catches him nicely. I think it's with about a minute and a half to go, just
that's right.
over.
Yeah,
Um,
it was.
it's a really nice shot. And I
Yeah,
think
he
you
was
can
shouldering
see,
off, wasn't he?
and you can see that Eubank is aware that Nigel Benn is much more focused and much more
Mm.
uh, cold and calm, because
Yeah.
every time he does get him in the clinch, he'll give him like a little push in the back of the head just to try
Yeah.
and get a reaction out of him. But Nigel Benn's
Mm.
not interested this time around, or certainly
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
point. He's just there for the to show his skills.
Mm.
And there is towards the end of that second round they have a couple of exchanges where they're really putting some weight behind those punches, both
Yeah.
of them. Um, and even though I had Nigel Benn winning this round, Eubank, he does throw some strong shots and some good
Yeah.
combos, but that accuracy which we saw in the first round wasn't there. He missed
Yeah.
much more punches this time round,
Yeah.
or this
Yeah.
round, rather.
Absolutely.
Next third round.
Yeah. Third round. Yeah, I saw a little bit of better things from Eubanks. He was, instead of trying to just sit behind his jab, he was actually trying to throw off those combinations. But I think he was forced to. I think he had to come in with a bigger combination. But that was making him have to work harder. And I don't think Eubanks is so good when he's under load. I think he was being forced to run at a pace that he was not comfortable to run at, but felt that he had to try to meet pace on pace. But as much as he was trying to meet Nigel Benn pace for pace, that was the case. But Benn was just edging it a little bit for me again, because when it was in those clinches, he was working there as well. It just looked like Nigel Benn was just working a couple of punch pace more than Eubanks was, and yeah, just his energy and vigor was giving it the visual edge. Yeah, that's how I scored that third round. Really, it's just hard work, hard punches going in. It looked good.
Yeah, I thought what was noticeable in the third round is I thought Eubank was loaded up his shots a lot more than
Yeah, it's,
what we almost saw in the whole first fight.
yeah,
He was looking for those big uppercuts,
yeah,
and sometimes he was missing by quite a distance.
yeah,
Um, and Nigel Benn was aggressive. He was, really pushing on. Um, and yeah, Nigel Benn I thought took the round, but again, Eubank does look he's in the fight. If you, that's what I mean.
yeah,
Even though
yeah,
Nigel Benn's probably taken two of the first three rounds, Eubank looks a little bit out of character, out of sorts. Would you say? Um,
yeah. He looks big, Eubanks. He looks like he's got some size advantage there. So whether that weight cut was a little bit harsh for him, or whether it's the fact that he's being made to miss more and go at a harder pace, I don't know whether it was down to that. I mean, it wasn't the tidiest of fight for either of them. I think it's because they both had to fight opposite end strategies. Nigel Benn was wanting it to be a scrap. He wanted to mess it up a little bit, make it less of a technical issue, and Eubanks was wanting to play long and sit behind something. But he had to create something to sit behind, and he wasn't able to create that for me. So it made it a little bit. They made it a little bit messy, and that's why you started seeing some blows from both of them. I think it started coming in because it was a messy, crowdy type fight.
yeah, there was a lot of work within close in, wasn't there? And we do in
Mm-hmm.
the third round and the fourth round. You see
Yeah,
um, a couple of lower blows. Moving into the
yeah,
fourth round, I think both fighters upped their aggression, um, and they were looking for some big shots. They both exchanged some big big combinations.
Yeah.
You know, both taking them very well.
Mm.
Chris Eubank looks irritated to me,
Mm.
whether it's from a kind of professional point of view, where maybe he wasn't expecting Nigel Benn to be so good,
Yeah.
or whether it's an emotional thing where he's been hurt and he's kind of like, right, he's a bit sort of upset from that side of it. I'm not sure, but he just looks
Mm.
a bit more aggressive than the
Mm.
first fight in terms of in the first fight he seemed happy to outpoint Nigel
Yeah.
Benn, whereas this one
Yeah.
he does look like he's going for that stoppage,
Yeah.
because he still seems to be loading up his punches. Whether that's because like you said, he's bigger, I don't know. What did you
Mm.
make of round 4?
Yeah, round 4. Yeah, more of the same of what you just said. Really, was Nigel Benn. Coming in. Obviously, they've got a few rounds under their belt now. They're proper warm. They're proper in the motion. I think these were the rounds where Nigel Benn was going to try to create something that could have led to a finish, but he wasn't doing it, blindly. He was just really working hard. Some of these shots started going low. Where I just think he was coming in with that head really low to come in again, but not as crazy low as we saw in that first one. But I think sometimes it made some of those hooks go a little wayward. But yeah, that's what I initially took note from that fourth round. Really was that he was trying to create some kind of potential ending result. He was really coming in with a lead body. He was coming with the overhand right. And it just looked like it was all suggestive to me that he felt like he could have perhaps hurt Eubanks in this round. Didn't happen, but I think he had intentions to try and cause something consequential. He was jumping in with left hooks, really winding up his shots.
Yeah, I think so. I had Nigel Benn winning the 4th round as well.
Yeah.
Into the 5th round, what did you make of this
Yeah,
one?
5th round. Well, that's quite exciting. Nigel Benn come out crazy fast. He really was trying to create something, but then in a weird conundrum, he's then sat on the ropes and was covering up and allowing Eubanks to come onto him. I think
calling him onto him.
Yeah, and that's a bit odd. I don't think Nigel Benn's got the strongest chin in the world. I think that's showing for the fact that Eubanks had defeated him, by finishing the bout. So, should have perhaps given Eubanks a little bit more respect than that. That was just a little bit of a head scratching moment for me on why he chose to do that and then sit on the ropes as he did. I felt like it almost gave Eubanks a little respite, although he was working because he took the opportunity. He was on the ropes. He worked like someone who had someone on the ropes. He started, really trying to graft with those combinations. But I think it let Eubanks off the hook a little bit and may have perhaps given him some confidence to try and get back in this fight. So that was a little head scratching moment. But then Benn picks it up again, starts looking a little bit more intelligent, and I feel like Benn drew back the round again and got it back under control. So I'll give that one to Benn as well.
Yeah, I felt like it certainly gave Chris Eubank a bit of a lift. A top level fighter is not going to miss the opportunity to come on, particularly when someone's in the corner there to be hit. Eubank, I thought, did really quite well in this round. Still, when Nigel Benn comes back into it towards the end of the round, there's a couple of kind of combinations, or like it's a bit scrappy, and Chris Eubank really seems to be loading up on those shots. Like he's looking, like almost like he's come in bigger intentionally, looking to finish it earlier. As opposed to outpointed him in the second time around. Obviously, Nigel Benn had a very good quick start to round 5, and then Eubank kind of comes back into it. What did you make of round 6?
Yeah, well, round 6, that was the round that Eubanks really comes out fast, doesn't he? He really tries to put something back on Benn. Benn is up for that and comes straight back at him, and you see Eubank's really footworking a lot more lively at the start of this round, and it's like he tried to force to have some of the fight out of range where he needed it to be. But Nigel Benn was really coming in quite cleverly and started to squash out that fast pace that Eubanks were trying to start with. But it was a little tussle. I liked seeing that. It goes to show that Eubanks was perhaps aware that these rounds were slipping away from him, and he's trying to get himself back in that fight. So this was quite good to see. But, he didn't or was unable to keep that pace going. I think Nigel Benn did absolutely the right thing and didn't try to meet him force on force. He was firing back, keeping up the work rate in return, but not in a crazy manner. Everything was done, pretty good. But then that wayward, I think it was a wayward low blow, didn't it? It got him a point deducted. I think he had a few warnings, and the referee was absolutely right to back up the warnings. That put him a point behind. Although Benn carried on working hard, I think this round was going towards Eubank anyway. And with that knockdown, I scored this round a 10-8 in favour of Eubank.
I did too.
And with me thinking the first round that was 3 points back on all that hard work that Nigel Benn had put in on all those other rounds. So it kind of made it a little bit more interesting for the second half of the fight. Eubank had a chance to really try to string together some wins and get him right back into contention to win this fight.
Yeah, I felt like in this round, Eubank realised he was down on points, and also realised that maybe his game plan wasn't working. So I felt like that this was the time where he changed it up a bit. I also felt like Nigel Benn tired a little bit in this round. Round 6, and I just the low blows had been coming, and the referee didn't really have a choice. But Nigel Benn worked hard in this round. He did still try and get that, keep working to see if he could win.
I just think the only reason he worked hard in that round 6, he knew he couldn't win back the round, but I think he wanted to keep on keeping the pace put on Eubank. So I think it was just part of the complete fight strategy, was just to keep pressing in the clinch, out of range, charging in, and crowd his work. I just think he just kept that pace up going on him.
Yeah, and I also felt like that. I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. Don't know what I was going to say. Sorry about that. I had a point, and when you were talking, and then it's completely gone. Okay, that's my age. That is coming into play. I'm starting to push up there in years. Round number 7.
Yeah, this one you see, so either some water was being spilled or the sweat was certainly getting on the canvas. You see, Nigel Benn slip, and like a gentleman that he always acts to be, Eubanks didn't capitalise on that, although I think he could have done. But yeah, he slipped. It looked quite a nasty little stumble there. They get back on it. One of the things I noticed Nigel Benn was doing, he was trying to break free and get that hook active onto the head again. So he'd been working the body a lot in that clinch in the previous rounds, but he was really trying to edge away and trying to create something off that right hook, breaking on the clinch. It was just a little observation. But then later in the round, you see Eubank slip as well. So really, that was a round of little slip-ups, but much of the same thing. I just felt like the work rate was slightly in favour of Nigel Benn. He was the one pressing forward. He was the one that was making my eye cast to him and his work rate. It was just another round that slipped away from Eubanks, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought as well that maybe I still feel like Nigel Benn starting to look a little fatigued, but his skill is meaning that I do think Chris Eubank's struggling to contain him. And as you finish round 7, Nigel Benn looks like he's got the bit between his teeth. Chris Eubank's got a very, very wide stance. And as soon as right at the end of round 7, Eubank loses his footing,
That's right. He slips there.
and I just watched it back again, and I just wonder whether he didn't slip, whether he got a little rocked because he gets caught just before it, yeah, with a left
Right.
hook, and
Right.
just as he's kind of the slip comes as the left hook
Right.
connects. So I wonder whether I do think he slipped, but maybe the left hook was the reason he slipped. But I know they
Right.
didn't give that as a official knockdown
No, they
because
didn't. No.
when he got knocked down against Michael Watson was the first time he'd ever been knocked down. So
Right.
round 8, mate.
Yeah. So round out, yeah, I saw Eubanks missing with some big shots. He was really winding up on his shots now. I think he knew he was slipping behind. He knows that he's got the capabilities to stop Nigel Benn, and I think he's now trying to wing big shots in. I think he knows he's behind. He knows that he's probably wanting another knockdown to try to level up those rounds or to knock him out. We see him really loading up, and so much so he's punching off balance. You see him stumble over. He throws literally so wildly. Yeah, I'm thinking a bit of desperate measures is creeping in now.
Yeah, I think it's clear he's starting to worry, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and consequently, he's winding up on the shots, missing. He was getting landed on steadily by Nigel Benn. Nigel Benn, although he's more fatigued, he controlled it really, really well. I really liked his head movement. I think it was much improved from their previous time they met, and this was giving Benn the edge.
Yeah, yeah. His head is so much stiller than the first fight.
Yeah,
His head, his shoulders, his upper body are moving in unison with each other, whereas he was a bit wild all over. And now, of course, as Eubank's getting more aggressive, he is using his jab, but
towards the end,
it's kind of like a short jab, isn't it? Rather than those big, long distance jabs keeping his opponent at bay, it's setting up his short, quick jabs to try and set up that big hook or uppercut.
Well, if you remember in the first fight that they had, that jab began to puff up the eye of Nigel Benn because he was able to fire it at long range, as single jabs. But yeah, you're right. He was doubling them up, shortening them, trying to land something consequential with the right hand rather than his lead. I think he should have been using footwork more in the early rounds and trying to establish that jab just to try to counter the really good head movement, improved head movement, and closing the range improvements from Benn. But he didn't do that.
Well, one of the things that we really, really praised Chris Eubank for last week was his footwork, how much he was moving. He was making it so difficult for Nigel Benn to nail anything consequential on him. Whereas now, if you watch in the end, like the end of round 8, he stood in front of Nigel Benn a lot. And he's kind of loading up his shots, as we said throughout the fight. He's easier for Nigel Benn to hit. Now, of course, Nigel Benn is vastly improved from the first fight. Vastly. But I also do think that Chris Eubank, not all, but a lot of the stuff which he did exceptionally well in the first fight, he isn't doing now as round 8. He's easier to hit. He's not as elusive. He's off balance a lot. I don't remember seeing Chris Eubank be off balance this much. A few times he's stumbled about where he's off balance. He's punching off balance. Where he's loading up so much. It's interesting to watch. It's clear that Eubank is starting to get a bit flustered because he knows he's down in rounds. And really, you're eight rounds in, done. Nigel Benn's winning. There's only 4 rounds up for grabs now. Into round 9.
I think the only positive we can take from Eubank's work is that he's obviously aware that he could well be behind, and trying to respond.
He's really, really exercising that jab in round 9, round 8, and start of round 9. That jab
round 9
really, really coming in.
Round 9, I gave that to Eubanks. It was like he was reacting to how he was either being told or how he felt that the fight was going. And like I say, this was like a good sign that he was trying to get himself back into the mix. So yeah, this was the first for a few rounds that Eubanks actually got himself back into the fight, and I gave him that round 9.
Yeah, they both take a tumble in round 9. It's obviously I don't know if it's slippery or whether it's just because they are both loaded up and they got a bit tangled. Nigel Benn's reverting to a lot of clinch work again. And body shots, whereas Eubank now is like jab, jab, looking for a big shot. Jab, jab, looking for a big shot, which is meaning that once he hits the jab, a lot of the time, Nigel Benn is closing the gap straight away. And because Eubank's footwork is not as good as it has been, it's a lot more difficult for him than the first fight. But I do think that he's round 9 I'd give to Eubank definitely. Round 10.
Yeah, round 10.
They're talking to each other a lot, aren't they?
Yes, there was.
Rounds.
I mean, that goes to show the frustration between their personalities. There was some history building between them. Okay, yeah. So round 10, you see Nigel Benn land really hard left hook. But one thing that Eubanks can do is ride out those hard punches really, really well. So as much as it landed really nice, he rode it out really well. He had another good round, Eubanks, but as much as he was really trying to get himself back in the fight with that previous round that I would think that he won in round 9, I just felt like he was just being outworked. Nigel Benn knew that this was getting towards the finishing line, and he dug deep back in return, and could just get off a little bit more scoring hooks. I was liking his hooks. He was hitting off the break as well in that round 10. And this was another one in the bag for Benn.
Yeah, it's it's very interesting round 10 because Eubank clearly wants to do some consequential work, but Nigel Benn seems to have perked up again. He's aggressive. He's not looking at that clinch as much. He's just a little bit of distance. He's not sat behind his jab, from a yard away, 2 yards away, just because he knows he's got the fight in the bag. But he's just opened it up a little bit. They're still clinching, but he's not looking to instigate that clinch as much. And then again, Eubank is looking for that left jab and the combination, and Nigel Benn is managing that a lot better than he did in the first bout. He couldn't cope with that jab in the first bout, in fact. So whether that's a team plan or whether he's developed as a fighter, in a couple of years, Eubank is visibly still really loading those shots, and that's not like him. He does nail a couple of nice little uppercuts. Nigel Benn is also, I think, getting a bit frustrated, maybe with Eubank, some of his antics with the grabbing of the head and because they're in a clinch there and he's hitting him in the back of the head and really quite frustrated. But yeah, I think Nigel Benn probably took round 10 only just, though. I think that was
it was a close one, really, really hard. If you have a look on the scorecard there, they've given it 10-10. What's that, Barry McGuigan?
I wouldn't dispute that, actually. I think that was very
absolutely.
close round.
Yeah, very, very close round. But these last 2 rounds again just go to show the response was there for Eubank to try to get back in. I felt like he really tried to push always to the finish line to try and create what finished their fight the first time around. I started seeing Eubank come alive. I just on his behalf wished he'd done it in the middle of the rounds, but was unable to for whatever reason. Now, whenever I see Eubanks go back to his corner, he wasn't looking out of breath by any stretch. I think this could have been, lactic acid building up in those muscles because he's very heavily muscled for a guy in that weight division. He's really broad-shouldered, highly muscular guy, and I think it might have been, a lactic acid issue, in those big muscles of his. But in that round 11, I think we see some of the
Some
best
wild
work.
swings.
Yeah, he was really going at it and putting it on Benn. And I think Benn was feeling that constant pace he was pressing on Eubank. So I think he was beginning to feel it now himself. And so they were kind of locking horns a little bit more. But, to me, the crisper work, the more meaningful work was done by Eubanks, and I gave Eubanks that round 11.
Yeah, comfortably, I thought.
Yeah.
Without being like a dominant, 10-8er, it was
Yeah.
a good, comfortable round by Eubank.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, he looks jacked. He's
Yeah.
so big. I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing him this muscular and like there's
Mm,
not an ounce of
mm,
fat on him at all. Not that there
yeah.
ever was, but I don't remember
Mm,
seeing him be so big in the arms and shoulders.
yeah. Yeah.
And
He
whether
may.
maybe Nigel Benn's a little bit smaller from
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
first
think
fight.
that naturally, Eubanks is the bigger man, but whether he was beginning to grow out of that division, and you might have seen the consequence of it in this bout. Yeah, maybe it's a push too far for the weight cut for him.
So Barry McGuigan at the end of round 10 at 97, 95.
Right.
I have got Eubank winning this. You've got Eubank winning this. So I'll be interested to see what his scorecard is at the end of round
Yeah.
11.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Eubanks looks very, very confident at the
Mm,
end of that 11th round. He looks
yeah.
like he thinks that it's a bit of showmanship and a bit of
Yeah. Yeah.
mind games, isn't it? Where he
Yeah.
thinks trying to
Absolutely.
make Nigel Benn think that he's not as ahead as what people think. And when
Yeah.
you total up the actual scores rather than the
Mm,
rounds, like as we've been going through, I feel like we've said, Nigel Benn's won that, Nigel Benn's won that, Nigel Benn's won
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But actually, the actual scorecards are not that far apart, because of the
No.
way the scoring works. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you go into this 12th round. I didn't show them. I didn't see the scorecard then. But I was hoping to get a glimpse of what Barry McGuigan had before the final
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
I didn't see it though. I don't know if you did.
I don't remember seeing it. No.
So So what did you make of round 12? I'll just have a quick
Round
look and
12
see.
really saw Benn try to come back at Eubank. He had a really nice flurry at Eubanks, but I just felt those punches, they weren't wound in any way. There wasn't a lot of vigor behind them. They was just clustered together to score, and score they did. But then Eubanks come back with his own again, a little bit overloading, seeing a little bit of off balance. He was throwing that right cross and tripping over himself a little bit. It was a little bit untidy from Eubanks, almost desperate. But nevertheless, he dug really deep and was really cracking on his own work rate. And I think it began to tire Benn out. Benn, I think, did really, really well at the beginning of that 12th round. Middle of the round began to go in favour of Eubanks, although it was untidy. And then as we approached the latter part, I just felt like Benn had already given his best in the previous rounds, and it was a case of him just crossing the finish line. He did try and fire back, but there was nothing really, really there. They were shouting at each other. I'd love to have been the referee to heard what they were saying at each other. Both clearly frustrated at each other. I think Nigel Benn wanted to get the knockout in return to Eubanks, but Eubank was just too big, too good to be finished for Nigel Benn, and Eubank really finished with a nice little flurry, and I felt like that edged it for me for Eubanks.
Yeah, Eubank starts to showboat almost a little bit with about 30
Yeah,
seconds to go. He's
yeah,
giving it that. He's jabbing and moving because he nails a couple of really big combinations just before
yes,
that. And I
yeah,
think he feels like that was enough to take this round. And he obviously thinks he won the fight. Um,
mm,
Very interesting fight because all of a
yeah,
sudden now in this 12th round, particularly
mm,
towards like the kind of middle part of the round, like you said, Eubanks looked a bit untidy. But
yeah,
the final quarter of the round or the final third of the round, Eubanks suddenly looks exceptional again,
yeah.
like
He did.
what you'd expect from him. What we saw from him in so many fights.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
so what do you make? What do you like going on? gut feeling before you knew, like, heard the score and having rewatched it, would you have had Nigel Benn or Eubank winning that, or would you
Yeah,
think a
yeah.
draw was the
When we was off
correct?
there before we spoke about this, I saw it was setting up ready. It was a little bit behind, as we sometimes are with my scheduling on a Sunday, and I was a little bit behind, so I was rushing to set up, and I quickly tried to jot up who I'd ahead, because of course we got that knockdown and the loss of a round. We had that 10-8 in round 6. I had Eubanks winning an earlier round, and winning 3 rounds in the latter part, and I thought, oh crikey, that's, it's ended up as a draw, although my instinct and my visual on the whole fight as a complete was that Benn won. But when I had a little bit more time, and once we settled, I added up the scorecard again. I did have Nigel Benn 2 rounds up come the end of the fight, 2 points up. And I'll stand by that. I think Nigel Benn won this fight, and was, to see that it was a draw was kind of surprising. But then other people, when they was being asked in the interviews, who do you think won? Who do you think won? They were saying this is possibly going to be a draw. You got to wonder sometimes with the corruption of boxing, whether they said if it's not highly dominant in either favour, this is going to be a draw. It's almost like, well, could have this been one of those corrupt things where they're going to have it as a draw because of the money that's involved and trying to create this as a trilogy?
Yeah, are you surprised they never did the third fight?
Yes. Yeah, it was absolutely heading for that after this being called a draw. You could have easily argued for a third.
So yeah, it's given as a draw. I
Yeah.
think one judge had Nigel Benn, one but judge had Eubank, and then the third judge had it as a draw. So I gotta say, when we spoke off air, I believed that Nigel Benn won,
Yeah.
and then having just rewatched it as we've been talking, albeit in a fast pace, I lean in towards Eubank winning, which is interesting because
Right.
but that's not like totaling up any scores. That's just the feel to watch it. And obviously, I watched. It's in fast forward almost, so it's not taking in each bit and listening to the commentators and looking at the scorecards as you're going along. But that was
Yeah.
just the feel for it, which is just an interesting
Yeah.
kind of, I suppose, different way of looking at it, I guess.
Sure.
But I did think before I just watched it again, I did think Nigel Benn won it, and I did think they did. The promoters didn't want Chris Eubank losing. I think is clear.
Yeah.
Just because of who he was and
Yeah.
where they were. So yeah, it is what it is. Draw.
Yeah.
No third fight. Obviously, Nigel
No.
Benn
No.
suffered career-ending injuries in his fight.
Yeah.
In
I
a
think.
fight later on.
Yeah, they were both really what made their career for each other, because beyond that they didn't shine. I think Eubank had a real fizzling out career. I think towards the end, didn't he? He had like 3 losses in a row or something along those lines. I think he retired and come back as well, but just was very unsuccessful. I think them two with their rivalry was at the peak of both their careers, and they each defined each other's career with their rivalry. And shame the third one didn't happen.
Yes, yeah, I think their rivalry was fantastic for British boxing. I think it garnered the attention of everybody.
Did you ever remember seeing a game show that they both starred on? They did like this weird active. It was like gladiators, like a gladiatorial, where they pit up against each other with different gladiatorial events. I don't know whether you was ever aware that they did one, but obviously they're a lot older at this stage, very, very competitive, and then Eubank starts squaring up to Nigel Benn. You'll probably be able to find this on YouTube. He starts squaring up to Nigel Benn, rubbing in his face. He goes, "Hey, I've got some 16-ounce gloves in my boot. Let's put them on. Let's have a little bang about. Look, no one to get knocked out or anything. Nice 16-ounce gloves. Let's have a little pip about." And then Nigel Benn returns with, "What do you mean gloves? Let's just do it without gloves." And that's it. Everyone had to get in between them. They were both going at it. And but how them doing a show like that with those two characters that obviously had a lot of hatred for each other, how they chose to do this event and get them to agree to it. But yeah, I remember watching it back when I was a younger lad. Really enjoyed watching. I can't remember too much about it, but like I say, I think there is clips of it on YouTube. It's worth a little watch to just see how competitive they both are.
I'll have to have a little dig that out. Okay, so I'm going to throw this on you. Slight different change in schedule. We're going to have a look at Jack Shaw now.
Okay.
Just to throw you off a bit.
That's right.
Just because we're about an hour and a half in now, so we'll go.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
We'll have we don't need to spend ages in it. We'll just have a quick chat about Jack Shaw versus Simon. I've forgotten his name now. Tell you now when I come get it back on my screen. Maximevich. This was Cage Warriors 72. Jack was still on the prelims of Cage Warriors at this point. I believe it's one of his first pro fights. I don't think it's his pro debut.
Was this actually? Because wasn't these 3-minute rounds?
Didn't they announce it as an amateurs fight? Actually, just looking back.
I don't know. I think they were 3-minute rounds. They seemed ever so quick, these rounds.
So yeah, I got my subtitles on. They announce it as an amateur fight, but in the write-up it says it's a pro prelim.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The rounds are very quick. Jack Shaw will assume this was an amateur fight, then I guess. Versus Simon Maximevich on Cage Warriors 72. Jack is only 18 at the time.
Yeah, looks very young.
A young man. At this point, Jack Marshman is in his corner, and he's only recently turned pro at this point. So, you thought this is how early into Jack's career it is. Obviously, I think he's about 24, 25 now, maybe not even that old. So it's a few years back. As I say, a viewer asked us to take a look at his rise through the ranks, because he was very, very dominant in Cage Warriors.
Yeah,
he's a very, very good fighter. And you could see even in this fight, like, he's got the baby face, haven't he? He's very young.
Yeah, he looks very, very, very young.
But when he gets in that cage, and he's such a nice lad, like, he's very well spoken. He doesn't get involved in all the kind of hoo-ha on social media, insulting people, trying to build fights that way. He's very respectful. God, he looks young.
Yeah, he does look so young in there. Even his body hadn't.
Everything
just looks. He looks like a young boy, but fights with so much, power and vigor. He done really well with this fight. I was really impressed with the wrestling and the wrestling combinations.
Controlled the guy, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Like the other guy's older, more experienced. He's
physically more developed.
Yeah, he's a man. And straight away he takes his legs.
Yeah, he does. He shoots him for a single and then switches it to a double, runs him against the fence. Jack Shaw really showed that he's a pretty decent MMA wrestler, because he chains them together from out in the open to working well up against the cage, and then worked some really nice inside leg trips. It was really nice to see. Ended up having to work in Simon's half guard once they settled on the ground. But Simon was really trying to put up a gallant fight off his back. He was not a sitting duck laying down there, just wanting to receive hits. He was looking to scramble up, looking to be active himself. Jack Shaw just really, if anything, to be criticising, when you got to remember how young he was and how short these rounds are. I think they're 3-minute rounds. He just looked a little rushed at times, but not in a way where it was really messy. It just looked like he was, in a rush to get his work done.
Keen to fight it, almost.
And you could put that down to how young he was. You could put it down to the shortness of rounds and just overall inexperience. But you can see the early onset of that his skill.
Well when he gets the chance.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can see this kid's a talent from the get-go.
Sorry to interrupt you there, mate. You mentioned where he goes for the single at the start. He went for the single, then he adapted it to a double, then he changed it to driving him into the fence. Is that something which that change in thought process very quickly Would that be something which is unusual for someone so young, or is that something that would be
Yeah.
trained into you from a young
Well,
age to do with MMA?
you're seeing more and more young lads getting this kind of capabilities coming up through MMA now. They're rubbing shoulders with people with solid skill sets now, more often than ever, because the skill pool is so much larger now. So you are going to see these highly developed young lads. But the way that he was doing it was was very nicely done. When you do your combinations such as that, it's almost like changing gears on a bike.
Mm.
The more expensive your bike, the more smoother those gear changes, the less they clunk. His gear changing from the single into a double to driving up against the fence was really nicely done. He literally picked up that single, he ran it close to the double, rather than just shooting a double and getting sprawled upon. He picked up the single, got him off balance, connected with the double. To be kind to Simon, he really held his balance well, and Jack Shaw had to get him up against the fence, and still took several attempts before he got worked to the ground. But that Jack Shaw just didn't stop working. As much as I'm being very critical by saying he was rushed, the time limit was where he had to be really active within that time frame. I think he really wanted to finish. I think that's why he was going at the canter that he did. It was really, really quite impressive, and his ground exchange is really nice. In that round two, he started to find answers to the half guard that he couldn't find answers to in the first round, which goes to show that he knows how to adapt on the job. Whether you can put that down to his cornerman giving him good advice, or whether this is just his awareness that he knew he was stuck in that half guard and then tried other things and found a way to get past it. Only him and his team will know. I like to think that he figured this out himself, and so he got past that half guard, pressed his knee down into quarter guard mount, which is worth nothing to the person underneath. He had to let go of that. He was fully mounted. It was a skillful showing in that second round. Actually, I can't remember seeing this fight before. It's the first time I'd seen it today, as far as I'm aware. But I actually thought this was going to be over in the second round. But fair play to Simon. He was there. He was there to fight, and fight he did. And he got through to the third round.
Yeah, funny you mentioned about like young guys now these days being able to train with top level guys. Today, as we record this Sunday, I released a show earlier where with Jack's father, Richard Shaw, where I got to pick his brains a bit. We had a chat about combat sports, and it's particularly combat sports in Wales. It's a really interesting show. It's only about 40 minutes long, but it's a really it's an interesting show. Listening to someone like yourself who's a top MMA coach, and he said like the young lads who are in Shaw MMA now in the academy they've opened, they're training with Jack Marshman, Brett Johns, Jack Shaw, Mason, not Mason Jones. Who's the other one? Ban Elliott. So these, and he said there's boys who are like 15, 16 in there who are potentially going to be better than all those, those kind of the bigger names in Welsh MMA because they're training with those people, people from the UFC.
Sure.
Which is only ever going to improve you, isn't it?
That's right.
So it's interesting. That came up in the conversation, and we talked about that. But so guys, little quick plug. Check out that show. ACEcast number 189. That is 189 episodes. Could you believe? Yes, you can find that video youtube.com/ACEpodcast Nation. Richard Shaky Shaw of Shaw MMA. The third round, Jack. I got to be honest. Did you have Jack winning all the rounds?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He dominated the whole fight, didn't he?
Dominated completely.
Really dominated him. And if you didn't know who Jack Shaw was, and then someone showed you a picture of the two of them stood next to each other before the fight, I think most people would pick the other guy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
I've learned physically stronger.
I've learned in MMA you can't just judge it by the body. I mean, look at someone like Theodore. He never had a six-pack once in his career, but he was one of the best fighters there's ever been. But by the same token, he looks so fresh-faced. it doesn't look like he's got a bad bone in his body. It doesn't look like he's capable of what he actually did. So yeah, standing by side, yeah, absolutely. You know, you would perhaps be steering towards the more manly guy. The guy looks like he's been in a few fights, but yeah. But what a shocker with the performance. You can absolutely see early on that Jack Shaw is a potential huge talent.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to going, seeing how he progresses as he gets to
Mm,
fight stronger fighters. Because I
yeah,
haven't seen a lot of his fights, so
right.
I'm looking forward to, for us to watch him. Um,
Yeah,
and I do. You mentioned something that he is such a quiet guy and is such a well-spoken
mm,
guy, and he's such a nice person.
yeah,
But you put him in the ring or in the octagon, and he's a killer.
yeah.
And I find that really interesting because you
Mm,
see a lot of fighters have got plenty to say for themselves. They're
yeah,
confident, and they try and build a reputation for they want attention because they need to build
yeah,
their name, of course. Um, but Jack seems to go about it like very much like almost like that Gracie way of letting his fights do the talking and do the
yeah,
talking in the cage and kind of
yeah. Absolutely.
being very quietly spoken, if you like.
Yeah,
Just quickly on the third round.
yeah. Third round. Yeah, we see much of the dominance as we've seen in the previous two rounds, but each round had a different offering. And in this third round, you see more of Jack Shaw's broad skill set. When he had him up against the fence, when he couldn't get him down so easy, you've got to remember they're going a fast canter here, so their strength is not going to be, to the max all the way through. So he started using the forearm to create space to strike with knees and punches. So it just goes to show that he weren't wrestling just for the ground. He was in that wrestling scenario as well, looking dangerous with his strikes. He knew how to really make a blend with that wrestling, and that was impressive to see at such a young age too. Yeah, you're seeing that he had broad dynamic thinking from each round. When Simon gave him a question to try to figure out, such as the half guard in the first round, the second round he had a game plan for the half guard and passed the mount. In this round, when it was getting a little harder to just take him down, he had answers of, okay, well, don't have to take you down. I can just hold you against the cage and beat you up there. He had something new in each and every round, and that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and even when Simon managed to get Jack's leg sort of wrapped up, or try
Mm,
and defend, Jack was moving
mm,
him around the cage. While he was on
yeah,
top of him, shuffling him
yeah,
around, trying to adapt the position, or just to make himself find a new, like you say, just adapt into the
mm,
situation and
yeah,
trying to find a way to win his, whether it's be
mm,
striking or moving him to a different position.
yeah,
Um, and he's all round impressive. You can
yeah,
see why he's still unbeaten. I got to say.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to enjoy going over his career.
Mm.
I love seeing these young lads. It just takes me back of when I was young, hungry, and wondered how far I could take it. And I know how good that feels. And it's so nice seeing these young lads go through that same type of experience. Of course, each of our journeys are mildly different in their own right, and it's personal to us in different ways. But to see a good kid like this, like you say, he's very well spoken. He's a good lad. Don't get too caught up on any of the bad mouthing on the internet. He's there to do a job and do it well, and enjoys doing it as well. And you can see that in his face. I'm just looking at him now. Really happy because he won, but he's enjoying the sport that he's involved with.
Okay, so this was his fourth fight overall, but only his
Right,
second fight in Cage Warriors.
right,
So that's pretty good. I'm quite happy that we got managed to find one
yeah,
as early on. So just having a quick look, he fights in some different promotions: Pain Fight Pit, Ultimate Impact, uh, IMMAF European Open Championships. I suspect they'll be very difficult. Oh, they're amateur ones. That's why.
right,
So he fought two amateur cage fighters. His next fight was Cage Warrior 76, which was his first pro fight. So we should be able to find that one on Cage Warrior 76. So
Right.
that'll be the one for next week. It's versus David Torner Teeth Kroll.
Right.
So that'll be for next week. Jack Shaw. And it doesn't look like it's a long one, judging by that. But yeah, that was good. So to finish off, we're going to go through very briefly UFC number 6. Obviously, we had a
Yeah.
bit of current stuff to talk about this week, which we didn't know last week when we made the plans for everything. So we'll have a quick go through UFC number 6. What was your overall thoughts, mate? Just briefly.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Some of the fights were still quick, but some of the fights later on got really interesting. We're seeing some real MMA know-how in what we would recognise by today. It was good viewing, better than last week's one.
Yeah, some big guys in there as well, wasn't there? Obviously,
Yeah, there was.
the UFC debut of Tank Abbott,
Yeah,
who went on to have a career in the UFC, did quite
yeah,
well for himself.
yeah,
We see the return of Taktorov. We also see the super fight between Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn, which
yeah.
I was a little surprised. I didn't think Dan Severn looked up to his what he had looked like previously, but then was that because Ken Shamrock had improved so much? Because
Yeah,
one thing I will say is Ken Shamrock had improved every time we
yes,
watched him.
yeah. Yeah, I was disappointed with what I saw of Ken when he fought Hoist for the second time. It's really very, very cagey. Like I said, I felt like he was almost happy to settle for a draw because that would mean something to him. So him it was a victory somehow. But I think he was capable of possibly beating Hoist had he played a different strategy. But I still think he put Hoist on a pedestal. And that's why you never see him win. But this time around, I mean, initially when I think of Dan Severn back then fighting Ken, I would perhaps still put my money on Dan Severn to win. And it was good. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's
Well, I
let's
tell you
take this
what,
fight by fight.
I tell you what we'll do. Seeing as the Ken Shamrock Dan Severn was outside of the tournament, we'll
Yeah.
start on that.
Okay. Yeah, we can do
And we'll
that.
just kind of go through that. What did you
Yeah.
overall? What did you make of the? Or not overall. Like what did
Yeah,
you make of
I
the Dan
really
Severn?
enjoyed it. Yeah, Ken's obviously a very, very fit, muscular guy, not as big as Dan Severn. And Dan Severn, is a more decorated wrestler, the bigger guy. But you actually see them locking horns in what we call a pummel drill, where you both have one arm under, and you really see, pure wrestling almost there. You did see Ken fire up a knee shot, which I don't think Dan Severn was too happy about receiving, but took it really well. They re-clinched again. You see Dan really try to snag Ken Shamrock's head down to try to get on top of his head to try and work a position to the ground, but Ken was just too aware. But eventually it does go to the ground. When it goes to the ground, I thought, okay, this is going to be it. Dan Severn's going to start really taking over it, but it didn't happen. They kept going back to the feet, and Ken had already filled out for a guillotine a little earlier on in that round. And I thought, well, crikey, that's going to go on. That's going to go on. But Dan Severn showed awareness of that submission and rolled out of it, and you look pretty good. But in the latter wrestling exchange, when Dan Severn pressed Ken Shamrock up against the fence, he got his head caught in again. He managed to trip Ken Shamrock down, but it did nothing but really tighten it on even more. And it saw the finish, and I was a little surprised. I thought this was going to go on a lot longer. I thought it was going to be a lot closer. But as much as Dan Severn was obviously aware of what a guillotine was and how to escape it, he didn't escape it that second time.
Yeah, he was aware straight away, wasn't he? That he didn't want to be there. However, I was a little bit disappointed with how quickly he tapped. I felt like maybe he kind of went a bit early, like I don't want to say a bit early, but it just he didn't seem to put up much of a fight once the
Yeah,
choke was on. Now that's I'm no fighter, so maybe
yeah.
once the choke's on, the choke's on, I guess. But
Yeah, but what you have to remember back then, probably Dan Steven weren't training with any top jiu-jitsu guys still at this point. So he wouldn't have been used to the feeling of being choked out. I imagine when he's training, he was dominating over most opponents. He's a pretty big dude and a pretty damn good wrestler as well, and a younger version of how we know him to have become, because he really become a journeyman, didn't he, in his latter years? And a lot of his wrestling capabilities had gone out the window because of Father Time. But yeah, I couldn't imagine he's been choked out in training very often at all. And so, well, when he was put in that guillotine, it started to really bite home, and he no longer had the know-how how to get out of it in that position that ensued with the second guillotine attempt. I just think panic set in, and yeah, just tapped out. He's just not experiencing this before.
yeah, he just didn't know what to do. Maybe.
Yeah, oh, he obviously knew what to do with the first attempt,
Yeah,
but the
he
second one, he tripped him down and got himself caught up, and yeah, it just went in too tight. I think once you feel that blood supply, you know, being taken away from your brain, it can make panic set in, and you can tap sooner, rather than trying to make a correct movement to try and get out. Yeah, it was a little shocking. I was a little surprised it was over so quick. I couldn't remember the fight, so I was really looking forward to seeing it. I didn't even know who won, so I was like, "Oh, crikey, who's going to win this? It's going to be a great bout." My thoughts were, push come to shove, that Dan Severn was going to win it, but he didn't. So, but well done, Ken Shamrock. We're seeing him improve, like you say. Every UFC, he's making vast improvements.
Yeah, I thought his striking looked quite sharp as well.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
little we saw.
yeah,
So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see where we where we see him next and
yeah.
where he goes on our quest of where we're going and all
Sure.
these different UFCs. Okay, so the actual tournament, we start with Tank Abbott making his UFC debut
Yeah,
versus John Matua.
yeah.
It did not go well for John Matua.
No, no. I don't think they liked each other very much. I mean, John
They
Matter was
didn't seem
huge. I
to,
mean,
did they?
yeah, he was a 400-pound man, a big, big man. Tank Abbott's no small dude himself, but that's a that's a big dude, 400 pounds. But yeah, they both come out explosive. Tank Abbott, as we know, goes you know all out with his hands. He's got good, pretty good wrestling as well. He comes out, he rocks Matua early, and Matua just couldn't recover. He just wanted to get hold of Tank Abbott, couldn't. Got rocked again, and then, well, the forearm smashes come down and knocked him cold, so much so he had his arms outstretched like a zombie on the ground.
Yeah, it was just a scary one, wasn't it?
It was a
Scary
scary
knockout.
looking knockout, yeah. But yeah, I remember when Tank Abbott come on the scene, I was thinking, "Oh, how's anyone going to be able to stop this guy?" Yeah, a real menacing, scary dude back then.
Just the way the guy went down and just
Yeah,
all
yeah,
round everything about it was not
that's it.
pleasant.
Yeah,
They did say later in the show that he was all right and whatnot,
yeah,
but still, just that visual of him kind of, I don't know, just being arms and legs in the air and twitching, and it's one
yeah.
of those, isn't it? It's just one of them. Next up was Paul Valerians versus Cal Worsham,
Yeah.
with Valerians winning via KO elbow. This, I tell you what a brutal
Oh
elbow
man, they
this
just
was.
went at it. I mean, this was more like a
Guy was
pub fight,
huge,
street
wasn't he?
fight.
This guy,
Yeah, 6'7", 6'8", I think he's billed
Paul
at.
Valerians. Yeah,
Paul
he's
Verlins,
massive.
yeah, he had a little bit of a career, not a massively successful one, but a big, big dude. For a guy that's supposed to be billed as being Taekwondo, this Warsham guy, he just come out like a street puncher, didn't he? He was actually giving Paul Verlins a good match for a little while. Eventually, I think he bottled out of the punching and tried to take Paul down. Paul was a little bit aware. He wasn't a great shoot. It wasn't a great takedown defense. I just think Paul Verlins being so big saved him from being put on his back. And then started to get the upper hand. I think that Wilson guy was beginning to fatigue. Paul Verlins was still giving it some, and started doing some weird forearm stroke elbow smashes. I don't know whether I think they're supposed to have been elbows, but it's landed with the forearm. And I just think that Cal Walsham, I think he just gave his best and was beginning to get tired and blow hard and wanted a way out. I don't think Paul Verhoeven's necessarily really knocked him out. They looked all meaningful, those forearm smashes, but none of them looked like they landed super clean. I just think the other lad wanted out.
But was it this one where it's the massive elbow to the back of the neck, which
Yeah, but it wasn't like it didn't look like it actually landed like in any devastating way. I think the guy kind of slumped to the mat and wanted to have out with it all.
Ready to go, like.
Yeah, I just think he gave his best, and that was that.
Okay. Next up was Patrick Smith making his return. It was a kickboxer, defeated Rudyard Moncao via a submission with a rear naked choke, which I found very interesting.
What was more interesting than anything else was the fact that Patrick Smith decided to come out in a wrestling leotard. I think really trying to signal, hey, look, I'm training in other arts. I'm becoming well-rounded. Really loves his guillotine attempts. We saw them in some of the other UFCs as he began to develop. He had some success with his guillotines and was hunting from that from the get-go. But one of the things that he did come out and do, he come out and done a front teep to the chest, knocked the guy flying backwards. That was quite impressive from the get-go. Jumped on the guillotine that he held on for some time. But was unable to put him away with that guillotine. Although a couple of times it looked really close. Threw the man to the ground, not in any particular pretty way. Got mount very, very quickly with no real preventive know-how from his opponent. Ground and pounded, gave up his back, and did like a rear naked choke. Went a proper rear. It was like more of a wrestling palm on palm choke without the hooks in. He didn't even get the hooks in, but it was enough to create a tap out. Very, very quick fight. Impressive showing from Patrick Smith. I was just disappointed that for whatever reasons he was unable to go through to the next round, because obviously he was improving, becoming more well-rounded.
They said, didn't they?
Is what?
Stomach cramps.
Oh, stomach cramps. Oh, yeah, I don't know. But it's a bit of a shame that he never went on, because I was really looking forward to seeing how he was going to do against the other guys, but never mind.
Such is the nature of the tournament. Next up was Oleg Taktarov making his second appearance versus David Bentanu, also making his another appearance, with Taktarov taking the win via guillotine after 57 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, this was, going to be a great match, but was a little bit quicker than I thought it was going to be. That Dave's a big guy. We know he comes with mean intentions. We saw him have some successes in the previous UFC. And I was really excited to see this matchup. But Oleg is just so stone-faced. He really shows no emotion. If he gets hit, he don't show no emotion. He's doing the hitting, shows no emotion. A real calm cookie. We saw him working his guard, looking quite good from there. He had some awareness to scramble back to his feet with Dave trying to hold him down. They have a really strange situation where there was a takedown, but then a flip over, and it ended up with Oleg getting an arming guillotine, which was nice and deep, and he was nice and still fresh, and was able to tap him out really early, which is exactly what you want in a knockout tournament such as that. He also bludgeoned Dave up, so at some point he must have received a nasty hit as well. But a really good, fast-paced, crazy fight. Didn't go how I thought it was going to go. Not necessarily with the winner, but I thought this fight was going to be a longer drawn-out fight. I thought it was going to go at least to 5 or 6 minutes. But Oleg, as we're seeing, is a good submission artist, and he knows how to put it away given an opportunity.
Yeah, he's so cool under pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter what happens, if he gets taken down, it's just...
Yeah, he looks like a mean dude. When you see him being interviewed, obviously his English is not great. But again, he's not showing any emotion other than breathing hard. But he's got those diamond blue eyes, that expressionless face. He's a good character for MMA at the time.
Yes, indeed. So the semi-finals were Tank Abbott versus the giant Paul Verlins, and Oleg Taktarov versus Anthony Chaos, who was a stand-in for Patrick Smith. So
Yeah,
Tank
yeah,
Abbott defeated the massive Paul Valerins via TKO punches after 1 minute 53.
yeah.
He did not like getting hit.
No, no, he didn't. But who would from a guy like Tank Abbott? I mean, Tank Abbott back then, everything was thrown with full vigor, and a big
Oh yeah,
lumpy
he's a
dude.
nasty, nasty man as well,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
he doesn't care, if he's going to give you a lifelong injury to get that win. He's just ploughing everything home. Had there been a weapon in the cage, he would have picked it up and used it without a doubt. This guy's a mean dude. He lands a really nice overhand when he comes running out on Paul Verhoeven's. Don't give Paul Verhoeven's a chance to make his large stature count on Tank Abbott. Tank Abbott easily gets him to the ground with superior wrestling. Gets stuck in half guard for a little bit. Paul Verhoeven shows some some kind of resistance there. Definitely can take some punishment, but eventually Tank Abbott started to pull his leg through. Wasn't fully out of the half guard, but started to rise up and put the knee down on Paul Verhoeven's head and neck. It just looked horrible. It looked ever so uncomfortable. And then he was just looking like, I've got this guy under control. Tank Abbott was looking very, very confident at this stage, and I think it was a referee stoppage actually in the end. Yeah. I think the referee had just seen enough of it. Yeah, there was nothing he can do. I think it was already cut up and bruised up from the previous fight. It was going to be much of the same thing. He's there to keep the fighter safe, and it was an absolute good call to stop the fight. He was never going to get out of this.
Yeah, especially considering where he had that knee on his chest, he just didn't seem to know how to get out of it. He wasn't even trying to get out of it. He was just trying to avoid getting hit more. So the other semi-final went 9 seconds, and that was Taktorov versus Anthony Macias.
Really disappointing for the Matthews. He looks like he's a real good guy. I just don't think we got to see. I think he was a better fighter than what we saw. Is what I'm trying to get at. He shot him really early, put his head down. But like we've seen, Oleg knows what a guillotine is. And Matthews is not the biggest guy. He's one of the smaller guys in the tournament. And having someone technical and with a size advantage like Oleg, you don't put your head down there for the taking like that. Got guillotined very, very quickly.
Yeah, and Anthony Macias, he went on to have quite a long career in mixed martial arts. I was just trying to see if he went on for UFC. So he didn't fight after this in the UFC. But he did go on. He fought he fought in Pride. He fought in World Class Fighting. He fought in International Fighting Championships. What else we got? Yeah, just like a lot of sort of regional MMA, World Fighting Championship, that sort of thing.
I'll have a little, look because I'm quite curious to see how he was going to improve. Because, like I say, he's
26-18.
Okay, so he had some results there.
And he retired in 2014. Or his last fight was in 2014 at age 50. But it seems to be done now. But he beat former UFC fighters Brian Gassaway and Shoney Carter along the way.
Oh wow, yeah, okay. Oh, Shoney Carter. I mean, Shoney Carter was good back in the day. He was he had some good judo skills.
So you were right about the kind of, he looked like he had something. Because he did.
Yeah.
He went and
decent
enough.
He just needed there to be weight. He needed weight brackets. He was not the biggest guy, like I said. I mean, 5'10" is not a small man by any stretch, but the other dudes in there are all 6-footers, pretty heavily built and grapplers. He was a striker, much lighter built, and was trying to learn the grappling. And he's really up against it in there. I'm glad he had a career though. I'm going to have a little study of that out of curiosity.
So, to finish us off for tonight and this week, we got our final between Oleg Taktorov and Tank Abbott. What I really liked about this is they gave the fighters a little break, and they had the super fight and they put the final on last.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah,
like that. And
yeah,
this was the longest fight of the night as well. It went
yes.
17 minutes and 47 seconds. I
Yeah, and I
didn't
actually
know.
enjoyed it. There was a couple of lulls in it, but I really enjoyed it. It was really good. The
I just
both
didn't know what
men,
to expect from this. I
no,
thought of going in.
but yeah, you got the slightly smaller, more skillful man in Oleg, possibly better rounded, but then you got the pure size and aggression of Tank Abbott. It was really good. Tank Abbott come out as we knew he would come out. I kind of thought, oh, God, is he going to overwhelm the cool Taktarov? But Taktarov was cool. He managed to survive it. It does end up going to the ground. Tank's a pretty good wrestler, but he wasn't his wrestling as he got him down. Oleg got hold of his neck and thought he could finish it with the guillotine attempt. He's had successes with it in the previous fights. I think maybe he had too much hopes pinned on it, but Tank Abbott, he rode it out and ended up on top inside guard. Wasn't able to be too active in that guard. You see Oleg being active with his guard, trying to get a little bit of strikes off, but Tank Abbott was too big and heavy and stacking too deep in Oleg's guard for Oleg to be effective with those counter strikes. But you did see him try and come up for a triangle several times. Now, as much as those triangles were good valid attempts, strategically, it's just not a good idea to do it as someone of Tank Abbott's bulk, because you can get guard past it. And you did see that. You see Tank Abbott get past. They get back to their feet. They have some more exchanges. Both of them now looking really, really tired. I think at this point, Tank Abbott's looking more tired than Oleg. Oleg's really doing the right type of thing now with his guard. He's now getting fit on the hips and to try to stretch Tank Abbott's head further back so he can get leverage on strikes, and also to start getting those elbows away from the body to try to get those submission attempts again. But again, he opted for the triangle, which was a surprise. And like I say, doing it against a well-built guy and giving away a weight advantage generally ain't a good idea. And he got himself guard passed again. Tank Abbott actually did some good things. What I thought, oh, crikey, his ground's better than I thought it was, because he started blocking the hips going around to north-south with his arm. And I was thinking, oh, crikey, his ground's quite well developed, but then gave up on the control and then got put easily back into an open guard. So perhaps his grappling wasn't quite as accomplished as I thought for those few seconds. So again, we see him in the open guard. Both men are absolutely exhausted. So I've got on my notes here. They get called back to the feet. Now, the referee kept saying, look, you're going to have to be more active, because I think that this was the first UFC that they got told that if there weren't enough activity, they're going to start standing you up. And I think that probably come about because of that super fight between Hoyce and Ken Shamrock.
Definitely.
I think, and that was absolutely a good call to bring that in, because it doesn't become good viewing. As the competitors become more aware of what's happening, you're going to get less fast finishes, and you're going to get them dulling down in the ground arts. And they really need to find a way, or they needed to find a way to keep this a fast-paced combat sport. So it was a good call to bring the stand up. So they was called back to their feet. Both men were absolutely exhausted. It began to look like Tank Abbott was the more fresher guy.
Yeah.
It actually looked like Oleg. I think all that weight, the fact that he was having to fight off his back, was making him more exhausted. But then a little rain of hope come. They go to the ground with another guillotine attempt on Tank Abbott. Tank Abbott tripped him down, but was getting in trouble there. He had to roll over to his side to avoid it. Ended up getting caught in a turtle position. Gave up his back with the hooks in, and we know how proficient Oleg is with his submissions, and having the back. Well, it must have been like a kid in a candy shop. Got round Tank Abbott's neck, and I think again it's more of a case. Although I do think he would have choked him, I think it was more of a case that Tank Abbott was done, and with the slight pressure on his neck, gasping for air, it was all just too much for him. But both men, I mean, round of applause. I even found myself clapping, sat here watching my tablet on my own. Because I enjoyed it so much, the fact that they both gave it their absolute all. I think Oleg needed oxygen at the end of that. Good viewing. I enjoyed it. It had its lulls where Tank Abbott couldn't, figure a way to get past the guard, other than the fact that the triangle was throwing up. It had a few stale patches, but yeah, overall, it was good to see fighters give it their all.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was a really good fight.
Yeah.
Well, there's a point about 14 minutes in where Tank Abbott had mount and he was smashing Oleg Taktarov around the head, and
Yeah.
Oleg Taktarov is just a scary dude because he just
Yeah.
takes it, no
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
emotion, no
Mm.
grimace, no nothing, just takes
Yeah.
it, and then literally 3 minutes later he's choked him out,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
needs oxygen because he's so exhausted, but he's
Yeah.
just choked out like Tank Abbott, who had previously looked like wow,
Yeah. It looked
no one's gonna
unstoppable.
beat him. He's just knocking
Mm.
everyone out, and
Yeah.
it's just very very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really am starting to get really. I've enjoyed all of them, but um, I really really enjoyed the fights in these. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously, as we're for me as well, like I'm like you're getting people like Tank Abbott and stuff who I never really was able to. I was too young to get into them when they came round.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing them come into the sport.
Yeah.
Um, right, so next week we've got UFC 7, which is the battle in Buffalo. The super fight for the super fight championship is Ken Shamrock versus Oleg Taktarov, which will be interesting. And I can tell you now, it's a 33-minute fight.
Ooh. Okay.
So that could be good or bad. It could be the same as the Tank Abbott fight, which would be good, or it could be the same as the Royce Gracie fight, with not so good. Um,
Mm.
see if we got any familiar names coming in. Harold Harold
Oh, he's back.
Howard is back. Mark Hall, Remco Pardoy, Marco Horse, Paul Valerins is back again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Marco Horse, Marco
Oh, Marco
Antonio de
Ruiz.
Lima Royce.
Marco Ruiz. Is that what you're?
Ruiz, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was one of my favourite fighters back then. He was the I would say first of the real true complete fighters. A guy that could strike with world class strikers, grapple with world class grapplers. He was really good, really really good.
Cool. So he's coming in. Larry
Him and Oleg,
Hewington,
that they had a real
Jerry Harris.
rivalry fighting.
All right, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Not in this one, but maybe in the next.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
On other fight promotions, it was
okay,
they had a rivalry. They had really good fights, really bloody bare knuckle ones.
cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we got UFC 7 next week. Then the following week we have the Ultimate is called, um, which is basically UFC 7.5, uh, and I'll just give you a little glimpse into that. The
Mhm.
main event is the Dan Severn versus Taktarov, which goes a half hour, uh, and that's the tournament final. We got Marco Ruas is in it. He also fights Taktarov along the way. We got Tank
Mm.
Abbott, Steve Jennings back, uh, David Benatai, Keith Hackney, some big names in that one. Yeah, and then the just very briefly in UFC 8 is called David versus Goliath.
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking forward to that because I'm assuming that's going to involve some sort of uh, you know big weight, someone big versus someone small, or
Yeah.
the main event for the Superfight Championship is Ken Shamrock versus Chemo Leopold.
Right.
Wasn't Chemo the was he the sumo guy in one
No,
of
no. Kimo
UFC 3?
Leopardo. He was the one that fought Hoist, and then Hoist couldn't continue against Harold Howard. He
Ah,
exhausted
right,
him.
okay, I see. Ah, okay, so that'd be a good one between him and Ken in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks. But yeah, again, I really enjoyed that, mate. Guys,
Yes.
you can you can recommend us classic bouts and fights. Obviously, as the current stuff starts, we'll kind of ease down a bit on them now. We'll just go to the we'll finish up the shows with the UFC tournaments. We're going to keep doing those. Um,
Mm.
if there's just UFC and no other current fights, then we'll do the current stuff the retro UFCs as we're going through them, and then we'll pick a boxing fight, or you guys pick a boxing fight, so we have a bit of boxing each week as well. Subscribe to youtube.com/ACEpodcastNation. Spread the word. Tell them about the Danny Batten Fight Show, and recommend us some retro bouts. Danny, thank you for joining me, my friend. I really appreciate your time again.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Thank you, listeners. It's good having everyone drop in.
And one day we'll be out of lockdown. One day.
One day soon. Please. I just want to be back training. Honestly, as soon as the lockdown's finished, I'm going to have to go buy some new trousers, man. It's just terrible. My waist is just gaining and growing. This is the horrible thing about being mid-40s.
Just eating all the time. I feel like I just don't stop eating.
I have to be physically active, but yeah, I can if I don't have enough to do, which I've been keeping myself busy, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I fall into a habit of eating a lot.
Yeah, hopefully not too long now, mate. Hopefully not too long.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Stay safe, my friends.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers, Simon.